When Michael Jordan decided to disguise himself as a beggar to test people's compassion, he never imagined he would personally experience the sheer malice of humanity, followed swiftly by the kindness of a child. He had been sitting on a downtown Chicago sidewalk for 3 hours. "I'm starving. Please, just $1, Jordan murmured. Each passer-by confirmed his worst fears about human nature. Executives sidestepped him as if he were contagious. Mothers dragged their children away. Youngsters snapped photos to laugh at later. An elegant woman approached. For a fleeting second, Jordan felt a surge of hope. She tossed coins onto the ground without even meeting his eyes, as if he were nothing. The cruelest social experiment in history was shattering the soul of a legend, until three young, arrogant voices pierced the air. "Well, look what we have here," said a blond youth, pointing at Jordan with a smile that would chill the blood of anyone who understood what was about to unfold. Jordan's heart began to race. This wasn't mere indifference, and what was about to happen in the next few minutes would make the most famous man on the planet question everything he had ever believed about humanity. "Look at this filth stinking up our street," yelled Brad Mitchell, advancing on Jordan like a predator. The iPhone was already recording. Jake filmed everything, laughing. "This is gonna blow up on TikTok, man." Connor spilled hot coffee near Jordan's feet. "Oops, butterfingers." Brad stooped down, his minty breath contrasting with Jordan's deliberate stench. "What's up, parasite? What's your excuse today? Addict? Bum?" The hands that once dominated world basketball trembled, not from fear, but from pure fury. "I'm hungry, that's all," Jordan mumbled. "Oh, you're hungry?" Brad laughed cruelly. "Jake, did you hear that? The guy's hungry." "You know what irritates me about people like you?" Brad spat venom. "You expect us to fix your pathetic lives." Jordan clenched his fists. The irony was brutal. A billionaire being humiliated by spoiled brats. "I've tried to work." "Shut up!" Brad exploded. "Nobody wants your excuses." Connor kicked the scattered coins. "Want money? Go chase it like a dog." "That's right." Brad grinned with pure malice. "Let's see if you have any dignity." Dozens of people walked by. Some stopped to watch the spectacle. None intervened. Jordan felt his soul being ripped to shreds. Was this what humanity had devolved into? Brad raised his foot, poised to kick Jordan, when suddenly a shrill voice sliced through the air like a blade of hope. "Stop it! Don't hurt him!" An 8-year-old boy was running toward the group, his backpack swinging, his eyes ablaze with pure indignation. The angel who would save Michael Jordan's soul had arrived. Isaiah Jackson planted himself firmly between Michael Jordan and the three young assailants, his 4 feet of height appearing monumental against the injustice he witnessed. His small hands were clenched into fists, his chest heaving from his run and emotion. "Leave him alone! You're mean!" Isaiah yelled, his childlike voice echoing with an authority that surprised even Jordan. Brad Mitchell looked at the boy with a mixture of surprise and irritation, as if an insect had dared to interrupt his moment of amusement. "Get lost, kid. This isn't your business," Brad said, waving a dismissive hand. But Isaiah didn't budge an inch. Instead, he took a step forward, positioning himself even closer to Jordan, like a tiny soldier protecting a wounded general. "It is my business," Isaiah retorted, his voice gaining strength. "Jesus doesn't like unfairness. You're hurting him when he hasn't done anything wrong." Jake lowered his camera slightly, clearly uncomfortable with the child's intervention. "Dude, there's a kid here," he muttered to Brad. "I don't care," Brad replied, but Jordan noticed a flicker of hesitation in his voice. "Kid, didn't your dad teach you not to interrupt grown-ups?" Isaiah's eyes welled up, not with fear, but with a profound sadness that struck Jordan's heart. "My dad died," Isaiah said, his voice trembling slightly. "But he taught me that we always stand up for people who are being hurt. He said Jesus did that, and I'm going to do that too." Connor stepped forward, trying to intimidate the boy. "Look here, run!" "No!" Isaiah shouted with surprising force. "You look here. This man didn't do anything to you. He's just hungry and you're being cruel." Jordan felt something stirring within his chest, an emotion he hadn't experienced in decades. This child, not even half the height of his tormentors, was willing to confront them for a complete stranger. "Kid, you just don't get it," Brad said, trying for a more reasonable, yet still condescending tone. "People like him are a blight on society. They liar," Isaiah interrupted, surprising everyone with his vehemence. "My daddy said everyone has value to God. Everyone, even you guys, even when you're mean." The child's words hit Brad like a physical blow. For the first time since the humiliation began, he seemed genuinely shaken. "You're defending a—" Connor started. "I'm defending a person," Isaiah corrected, his tears now falling freely. "A person you're mistreating because you think he can't defend himself." Jake shoved his phone into his pocket, clearly uncomfortable. "Man, maybe we should just—" "Shut up, Jake." Brad cut him off, but his voice had lost some of its earlier aggression. Isaiah turned to Jordan, his small eyes filled with concern. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" he asked with genuine worry. Jordan looked into the child's eyes and saw something he hadn't seen in a long time. Pure kindness, with no ulterior motive, no judgment, no self-interest. I'm all right, kid," Jordan murmured, his voice thick. "No, you're not all right," Isaiah said, shaking his head. "They hurt your heart, and God doesn't like to see his child sad." Brad made a jerky movement toward Isaiah, angered by the child's persistence. "Enough of this charade," and then he shoved Isaiah harder than he'd intended. The boy lost his balance, stumbled backward, and fell hard onto the rough concrete of the sidewalk. A high-pitched tear echoed as his knee scraped against the pavement, and drops of blood began to trickle down his thin leg. A deathly silence fell over the scene. Isaiah slowly picked himself up from the concrete, utterly disregarding the blood oozing from his scraped knee. His small hands were scratched. A lone tear traced a path down his cheek, but his brown eyes blazed with a determination that impressed even Jordan. You pushed me," Isaiah said, his voice more sorrowful than angry. "But it doesn't matter. I'm still going to protect him." Brad instinctively flinched back, clearly unnerved at having hurt a child. Kid, that was an accident." "It was on purpose," Isaiah interrupted him, wiping away his tears with the back of his dirty hand. "But Jesus teaches us to forgive. I forgive you all, but I won't let you hurt anyone else." Connor glanced nervously around, realizing several people had stopped to observe the scene and clearly disapproved of what they were witnessing. "Man, we should bail," he murmured to Brad. But Isaiah wasn't finished. With determined steps, though limping slightly, he approached an elderly woman observing from a distance. "Excuse me, ma'am, may I use your phone?" Isaiah asked politely despite the visible pain. "Of course, dear," the woman replied, clearly moved by the situation. "What do you need?" Isaiah dialed the police number with small but firm fingers, while Brad, Jake, and Connor watched with growing unease. "Hello? Police?" Isaiah said into the phone, his childish voice a stark contrast to the gravity of the situation. "There are some guys here hurting a man in the street. They pushed me too. Michigan Avenue and State Street. They did injustice to someone who did nothing wrong." "Kid, hang up that phone right now," Brad shouted, taking a step forward. "No," Isaiah yelled back, surprising everyone with his courage. "They hurt my friend and did injustice. The police need to know there are bad people here." The distant wail of sirens began to echo down the street, and the trio of youths exchanged nervous glances. "Let's go now," Connor said, tugging Brad's arm. "This isn't over, kid," Brad threatened, but his voice betrayed fear. "You can go," Isaiah replied with an unnerving calm for an 8-year-old. "But Jesus saw everything you did. He doesn't forget." As the three youths quickly retreated, Isaiah returned the phone to the woman and, completely ignoring his own injury, knelt beside Jordan on the grimy sidewalk. What happened next left Jordan utterly speechless. Isaiah closed his eyes, clasped his small hands in prayer, and in a clear voice, in front of dozens of strangers now observing the scene, began to pray. "Dear Jesus, you saw how cruel these young men were to my friend here. Please heal his heart that hurts inside. You know he is a good person, even if others don't see it. And Jesus, help these young men learn to be good people, because their hearts must be very wounded inside to be so wicked." Jordan felt his hands trembling. This time, it wasn't an act. Genuine tears began to well in his eyes as he watched the small injured child praying publicly for him and for his assailants. "And thank you, Jesus, for letting me protect my friend," Isaiah continued. "Daddy always said the Lord puts angels in the path of those in need. Maybe I'm his angel today." Amen. When Isaiah opened his eyes, he found Jordan gazing directly at him, tears streaming down his dirt-streaked face. The sirens were closer now, but Jordan barely registered them. His mind was wholly consumed by the extraordinary child before him. "Why?" Jordan asked, his voice hoarse with genuine emotion. "Why did you do this for me?" Isaiah tilted his head to the side, as if the question were too self-evident. "Because Daddy taught me that whenever we see someone suffering, Jesus is testing our hearts," he replied with devastating simplicity. Jordan closed his eyes, feeling as though his very soul was being rewritten by those innocent words. When he opened them again, Isaiah was shrugging off his backpack, rummaging inside it with determination. "What are you doing, kid?" Isaiah offered a smile, a pure, unblemished smile that illuminated his entire battered face. "Daddy always said, 'He who has little and shares has much. He who has much and does not share has nothing.'" And then Isaiah did something incredible. He pulled a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in crumpled aluminum foil from his backpack. It was clearly the lunch his mother had prepared for his recess, likely the only guaranteed meal the boy would have until he got home. Without hesitation, Isaiah began to break the sandwich precisely in half, his small hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the profound emotion of what he was doing. "You must be really hungry," Isaiah said, offering the larger half to Jordan. "Mommy always makes tasty sandwiches. She puts a lot of love in with the peanut butter." Jordan looked at the offered half sandwich and felt as if he were beholding one of the world's most precious works of art. His trembling hands, now genuinely trembling, received the offering. "Kid, that's your lunch," Jordan began. "No, sir," Isaiah interrupted with a radiant smile. "Now it's our lunch. Jesus taught that when we share, we multiply." Jordan took a small bite of the sandwich. The simple taste of peanut butter had never felt so complex, so freighted with meaning. It was as if each bite carried with it the love of a working mother and the boundless generosity of a pure child. "Why are you doing this?" Jordan asked, still struggling to grasp the enormity of his experience. Isaiah finished chewing his half before answering, with the politeness of a well-raised child. "Daddy told me a story before he went to live with Jesus," Isaiah said, his eyes taking on a special glint. "He said Jesus sometimes appears in disguise to test our hearts. Sometimes he comes as rich, sometimes as poor, sometimes as a child, sometimes as an old man." Jordan felt a shiver run down his spine. "And what did your father say about that?" "Daddy said we never know when Jesus is testing us," Isaiah continued, speaking with the wisdom of someone far older. "So we have to treat everyone as if they were Jesus in disguise." The child's words struck Jordan like lightning. He, who had begun this experience testing the humanity of others, was now being tested by the purest humanity he had ever encountered. "You were sad because they hurt your heart," Isaiah said, gently touching Jordan's arm. "But God doesn't like to see his child sad. That's why he sent me to take care of you." Jordan could no longer hold back his tears. Decades of cynicism, of distrust, of emotional hardness began to melt away before the absolute purity of this child. "How do you know all this?" Jordan asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Daddy taught me," Isaiah replied simply. "Before Jesus took him to heaven, Daddy said, 'Isaiah, always defend those who are mistreated, always help those in need, and always believe that God has a beautiful plan for everyone.'" Jordan closed his eyes, absorbing every word. "And do you know what else Daddy said?" Isaiah continued, his eyes shining with hope. "What?" "That family isn't just about blood. Family is the people who take care of you when you need it," Isaiah said, holding Jordan's dirty hand with his own small, still scratched hands. "You need a family today, and I have a family that teaches how to love." Jordan looked at this small, wounded child who had just shared his only meal with a stranger and realized he was experiencing something sacred. "You want me to go with you?" "I do!" exclaimed Isaiah, his face lighting up like the sun. "Mom always says our house is small, but our hearts are big. You can sleep in my room tonight. It's too cold to sleep on the street. I'll sleep on the couch." Jordan hesitated. Part of him knew he ought to reveal his identity to end this charade. But a larger part, a part he hadn't felt in decades, wanted to savor this pure kindness for a while longer. "Won't your mom be mad?" "No, sir," Isaiah replied with absolute conviction. "Mom teaches me to always do good. She won't complain. She'll be proud that I helped someone." Isaiah stood up, still limping slightly, and extended his small hand to Jordan. "Come with me. You need a bath, real food, and a warm place to sleep." Jordan looked at that small, outstretched hand, and it felt as though his entire life had led to this very moment. Slowly, he took Isaiah's hand and stood up. "Let's go," Isaiah said, gently pulling Jordan along. "Our house isn't far, and on the way, I'll tell you more stories Dad taught me." As they walked, Jordan couldn't stop looking at the child beside him. Isaiah walked with a slight limp from his scraped knee, but his stride was light, full of purpose and joy. They resumed their walk, but after a few steps, Isaiah stopped abruptly and looked back, concerned. "Mr. Michael, someone's yelling at us." Jordan turned and saw a man running after them, shouting, "Hey, wait up!" Jordan's heart pounded. Had he been recognized? Jordan braced himself to be discovered, his mind racing with possible explanations for his deception. But when the man finally caught up to them, breathless from the run, Jordan realized it was just a street vendor, carrying a cooler on his back. "Boy," said the vendor, a middle-aged Hispanic man with a warm smile, "I saw what you did back there. That was brave." Isaiah smiled shyly, still holding Jordan's hand. "Thank you, sir." The vendor opened his cooler and pulled out 2 bottles of ice-cold water. "For you two," he said, offering the bottles for free. "With this heat, you'll need them." "We don't have any money," Isaiah began. "I don't want any money," the vendor interrupted. "When I witness genuine kindness, I reciprocate. My grandmother always said that kindness begets kindness." Jordan accepted the water, touched by the unexpected generosity. It was the second display of unsolicited compassion he'd received within minutes. "Thank you," Jordan said, his voice thick with authentic emotion. "Take good care of this boy," the vendor said, winking at Jordan. "He has a heart of gold." As the vendor ambled away, Isaiah and Jordan resumed their stroll. The chilled water was invigorating, but Jordan could barely focus on his physical thirst. His emotional thirst was being quenched in a way he'd never experienced. "See, Mr. Michael," Isaiah said, taking small sips of his water. "Daddy always said that when we do good, God sends more good back. It's like a beautiful cycle." Jordan watched the boy drink his water in careful, small gulps, clearly trying to ration it so it would last longer. "You can drink all the water, Isaiah," Jordan said. "You need to stay hydrated." "I'm saving some for Mama," Isaiah replied naturally. "She works hard and always comes home thirsty." Jordan paused his walking for a moment, absorbing the depth of the child's consideration. Isaiah didn't just think of others in moments of crisis, he always thought of others. "Tell me more about your father," Jordan requested as they began walking again. Isaiah's eyes lit up, as they always did when he spoke of his father. "Daddy was a builder," Isaiah began, skipping slightly as he walked. "He used to build beautiful houses for other people. Mama said he had magic hands because everything he touched became strong and beautiful." "And what happened to him?" Isaiah's pace faltered slightly, but his voice remained steady. "He fell from a very tall building," Isaiah said with the innate simplicity children possess when processing immense tragedies. "He went to heaven to build houses for Jesus. Mama said up there, he doesn't have to worry about anything falling because everything is perfect." Jordan felt a lump form in his throat. "Do you miss him?" "Every day," Isaiah admitted. "But Daddy taught me that when you truly love someone, they never completely leave. They stay here." Isaiah touched his chest. "And here, he touched his head. And they keep teaching us to be good." They passed through a more residential area, and Jordan noticed how people observed them. An unlikely pair, a man who appeared to be homeless being led by a small child. "Isaiah," said an elderly neighbor, watering plants in front of her house. "Everything all right, dear?" "Hi, Mrs. Rosa," Isaiah replied cheerfully. "This is Mr. Michael. He's joining us for dinner today." The woman, Mrs. Rosa, eyed Jordan up and down with clear suspicion, but her expression softened upon seeing the genuine joy on Isaiah's face. "All right, dear, but be careful," she said, casting a warning glance at Jordan. "Don't worry," Isaiah said with absolute conviction. "Jesus sent him to us." Mrs. Rosa shook her head, clearly concerned, but said nothing further. As they walked away, Jordan asked, "Do you truly believe God sent me to you?" Isaiah stopped walking and looked directly into Jordan's eyes with a surprising intensity for an 8-year-old. "Mr. Michael, Dad always said there are no coincidences in God's plan," Isaiah said. "You showed up right when I was coming home from school, right when those boys were being mean, right when I could help." Jordan fell silent, absorbing the child's simple yet profound logic. "And you know what else?" Isaiah continued, resuming his walk. "Last night I prayed to Jesus, asking him to send someone special to our family. Mom's been very sad and tired lately. I asked for an angel in disguise." Jordan's heart nearly stopped beating. "And you think I'm that angel?" Isaiah smiled with a purity that lit up the entire street. "I don't know if you're a real angel," Isaiah said, "but I know God hears children's prayers, and you're here." They turned a corner and Isaiah pointed to a small, modest, but well-maintained house. "We're here," Isaiah announced proudly. "Our house." Jordan looked at the humble structure, wooden walls painted a faded blue, a small porch with plastic chairs and potted plants that clearly received a lot of care. It was the complete opposite of his luxurious mansions, yet it exuded something his properties never had, a true home. "It's beautiful," Jordan said sincerely. "Mom says a beautiful house is a house with love," Isaiah replied, walking up the porch steps. "And our house has a lot of love." Isaiah paused before the door, his hand on the doorknob, and turned to Jordan with a sudden look of apprehension. "Mr. Michael?" "Yes." "If Mommy gets scared at first, don't be sad, okay? She just protects me because it's just the two of us now. But when she meets you, she'll see you're good." Jordan nodded, touched by the child's emotional maturity. Isaiah took a deep breath and opened the door. "Mommy, I brought a special visitor." A woman's voice came from inside the house. "Isaiah? You're home early from school, my love." And then Grace Jackson appeared at the doorway, and Jordan saw where Isaiah had inherited his natural kindness. Grace Jackson stopped abruptly when she saw Jordan standing on her porch. Her eyes widened, and she instinctively took a step back, pulling Isaiah protectively closer to her. Grace was a thin woman, visibly worn from hard labor, but her brown eyes, identical to her son's, sparkled with intelligence and strength. Her hands, calloused from cleaning, trembled slightly as she assessed the stranger at her door. "Isaiah, dear," Grace said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Who is this gentleman?" "Mommy, this is Mr. Michael," Isaiah exclaimed with enthusiasm, seemingly oblivious to his mother's fear. "Some boys were being very mean to him on the street, and I helped." Grace looked more closely at Jordan, noting his soiled clothes, the scent emanating from him, and the general appearance of someone who lived on the streets. "Isaiah, come inside," Grace said, her voice gaining a firmer edge. "But Mommy," Isaiah began. "Now, Isaiah." Jordan saw the fear in Grace's eyes and understood completely. A single mother protecting her only child, seeing a strange, seemingly dangerous man at her door. "Ma'am," Jordan said, taking a step back to show he posed no threat. "I understand your concern. Your son helped me when I needed it, and he—" "Mommy," Isaiah interrupted, his own tears beginning to well up. "Remember what Daddy taught us? He said Jesus appears in disguise. Mr. Michael was suffering, and those mean boys were hurting him." Grace looked at her son, then at Jordan, and back at Isaiah. Jordan could see the internal struggle playing out in her eyes. "Mommy," Isaiah continued, his voice growing more emotional, "I prayed yesterday, asking Jesus to send someone special to our family. And today, when I saw Mr. Michael being mistreated, my heart told me it was him." Grace knelt down to Isaiah's level, gently holding his small shoulders. "My darling, I know your father taught you to help people," Grace said softly. "But sometimes it's dangerous to bring strangers into the house." "He's not a stranger," Isaiah protested. "He's the angel I prayed for." Jordan felt he had to intercede. "Mrs. Jackson, Jordan said respectfully. Your son showed a kindness I've never seen before. I don't want to cause you any trouble. If you'd prefer, I can leave now. Grace studied Jordan's face for a long moment. There was something in his eyes, a deep sadness she recognized that made her hesitate. What happened to you today? Grace asked. Jordan glanced at Isaiah, who encouraged him with a nod. Some young men were mistreating me, Jordan said, opting for partial truth. Your son put himself between them and me. He got hurt defending me. Grace noticed Isaiah's scraped knee and the dirt on his hands for the first time. Isaiah, you're hurt. It's nothing, Mom, Isaiah said quickly. He was worth protecting, Mr. Michael. Grace hugged her son tightly, and Jordan saw tears welling in her eyes. My brave heart, Grace murmured in Isaiah's ear. Then she looked over Isaiah's shoulder and studied Jordan again. This time, Jordan saw something different in her eyes. Not fear, but careful assessment. Are you hungry? Grace asked. Yes, ma'am, Jordan admitted. Grace rose slowly, still holding Isaiah's hand. How long has it been since you've had a bath? Jordan hesitated. A while. Grace walked over to a small table near the door, where Jordan noticed several bills were stacked. She picked up a framed photograph, a tall, strong man, clearly Isaiah's father, smiling radiantly beside Grace and a smaller Isaiah. Grace looked at the photo for a long moment, then looked back at Jordan. My husband David always said that no matter how little we have, we always have enough to share, Grace said, her voice gaining strength. He said that when we close our door to someone in need, we close our door to God's blessing. Isaiah held his mother's hand. Mom, I knew you'd remember Daddy. Grace smiled for the first time since Jordan had arrived. Isaiah, you did the right thing, my love, Grace said, kneeling again to hug her son. Daddy would be so proud of you. Then Grace turned to Jordan. Mr. Michael, my home is small and we don't have much, but you are welcome. I have my husband's clean clothes that should fit you and hot water for a bath. Jordan felt his legs tremble. The generosity of that family was beyond anything he could have imagined. Mrs. Jackson, I can't accept. Yes, you can, Grace interrupted firmly. My son risked his safety to protect you. That tells me all I need to know about your character. Grace opened the door wide and gestured for Jordan to enter. Come in. You are welcome in our home. Jordan walked slowly across the threshold, feeling as though he were entering hallowed ground. Isaiah, Grace said, go fetch the clean towels and show Mr. Michael where the bathroom is. Yes, Mama, Isaiah said, darting excitedly into the house. Grace moved closer to Jordan, speaking in a low voice. I don't know your story, she said, and for now I don't need to. But if my son believes in you, and if you allowed a child to get hurt defending you, then there is goodness in you. Jordan looked into Grace's eyes and saw the same purity he saw in Isaiah, tempered by the wisdom of experience and pain. Thank you, Jordan said, his voice thick. I don't deserve this kindness. Every child of God deserves kindness, Grace replied simply. Isaiah came running back with fresh towels and a change of clothes. Mr. Michael, come see. These are Daddy's favorite clothes. Jordan followed Isaiah through the small but immaculately clean house, and as he walked, he noticed something that made him stop abruptly. On the wall of the small living room, Jordan saw a collection of photographs that told the story of a happy family tragically interrupted. David Jackson appeared in nearly all of them, a tall, strong man with an infectious smile and hands clearly calloused from honest work. But what truly captured Jordan's attention was one specific photo. David, Grace, and Isaiah at a picnic, all beaming with smiles. After a few minutes, Jordan took the most reflective bath of his life. The hot water washed away not only the grime of his disguise, but also decades of cynicism and emotional disconnection. As he donned David Jackson's clothes, he felt as if he were putting on a sacred responsibility. The clothes fit perfectly. David was built roughly the same as Jordan. As Jordan glanced into the small mirror, he saw not the celebrated billionaire, but an ordinary man clad in the attire of another ordinary man who had lived with dignity and love. Emerging from the bathroom, he found Grace setting the dinner table, with Isaiah meticulously arranging three-place settings. Mr. Michael, Isaiah exclaimed, you look handsome, just like Daddy used to after Sunday bath. Grace looked at Jordan, and for a moment her eyes welled with tears. David would have been the same size as you, she said softly. It's as if he left these clothes waiting for someone who needed them. Jordan approached the small table and noticed something that shook him even more profoundly. Bills stacked beside where Grace was preparing dinner. He could make out the numbers highlighted in red. A disconnection notice for electricity, overdue rent, various medical bills. Grace, Jordan said carefully, may I ask about these bills? Grace followed his gaze and quickly gathered the papers, clearly embarrassed. It's nothing you need to worry about, she said, attempting a casual tone. But Isaiah, with the unvarnished honesty of children, piped up, Mommy works very hard, but since Daddy went to heaven, the money isn't enough. Sometimes we eat pasta for many days in a row. Isaiah, Grace chided gently. But it's true, Mommy, Isaiah said without malice, and you're part of the family now, so he needs to know the truth. Jordan sank heavily into one of the chairs. This family, struggling to make ends meet, had opened their home and shared what little they had with a complete stranger. Grace, I cannot accept your meal knowing you are in such hardship. Mr. Michael, Grace said, pausing her cooking and looking directly at him. When David died, many people offered me things out of pity. I refused almost all of them. But helping someone in need isn't about what we have. It's about who we are. Isaiah toddled over to Jordan and touched his arm. Mr. Michael, Daddy always said that God doesn't count how many loaves of bread we have. He counts how many hearts share the loaves. Grace smiled at her son. Daddy was very wise, she said, and he raised a son who understands that some things are more important than money. But you need to pay these bills, Jordan insisted. We'll manage, Grace said with resolve. We always manage. God has never failed us. Isaiah showed the photos on a nearby dresser. Mr. Michael, would you like to see more pictures of Dad? He was a mason, but he built the most beautiful houses in the city. Jordan approached the photographs and saw David in various constructions, always smiling, always surrounded by colleagues who clearly respected and liked him. Dad died falling from a very tall building, Isaiah said with the simplicity of children. But the last building he helped to construct is where many happy families live. He was working on a housing project for low-income families, Grace explained. David used to say that building houses for those in need was the most beautiful profession in the world. Jordan looked at one specific photo, David embracing Grace and Isaiah, all of them smiling. But he said he would come back different. You look like him in the eyes, Isaiah said, studying Jordan's face. Grace stopped stirring the pot on the stove and looked at Jordan with curiosity. Isaiah is right, she said slowly. There's something in your eyes that reminds me of David, a deep sadness, but also a strength that few possess. Jordan felt he was treading on dangerous emotional ground. I'm not anyone special, Jordan said. Everyone is special to someone, Isaiah countered, and you are special to us now. Grace finished preparing dinner, a simple dish of pasta with homemade sauce and small pieces of chicken, and called everyone to the table. Let's have family dinner, Grace said. As they sat down at the table, Grace extended her hands to Jordan and Isaiah. In our house, we always give thanks before eating, she said. Jordan held Isaiah's small hands in Grace's calloused hand, and for the first time in decades, found himself in a genuine family prayer. Dear God, Grace began, thank you for another day, for having food to share, and for sending Mr. Michael to our family today. And thank you for letting me protect my friend, Isaiah added. Amen, the three said in unison. During dinner, Jordan ate the most meaningful meal of his life. Each bite was seasoned with love, sacrifice, and the generosity of people who had very little materially, but possessed spiritual riches he had never imagined existing. Mr. Michael, Isaiah said during the meal, tomorrow is Saturday. Would you like to go to church with us? Jordan nearly choked on his food. Church? Yes, Isaiah exclaimed. Pastor William always talks about angels in disguise. He'll be so happy to meet you. Grace smiled. Isaiah truly believes you're an answer to his prayers. Jordan looked at them both, his heart swelling with an emotion he couldn't quite name. Isaiah exchanged a glance with his mother, who nodded encouragingly. I asked Jesus to send someone who needed our family as much as we needed someone special, Isaiah explained. I asked for an angel who looked sad on the outside, but was good on the inside. Goosebumps prickled Jordan's skin. And I promised that if Jesus sent that person, I would take care of them with all my heart, Isaiah continued, just like Daddy used to teach me. The fork slipped from Jordan's hand. The child had described his situation with an impossibility of coincidence. So, you're staying? Isaiah asked, hope shining in his eyes. Jordan looked at the small family, battling immense hardship, offering everything they had to a stranger. But before he could respond, a heavy knock at the door interrupted the moment. Grace and Jordan exchanged a worried glance as the knocking repeated, more insistent this time. Who could that be at this hour? Grace murmured, carefully rising from the table. Isaiah, lacking the adult's instinct for caution, eagerly hurried to the window. It's Mrs. Rosa, he announced, and she looks worried. Grace opened the door to find her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Rosa, with an anxious expression on her wrinkled face. Grace, dear, Mrs. Rosa said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. We need to talk. She stopped abruptly when she saw Jordan seated at the table, wearing David's clothes. Good heavens, Mrs. Rosa whispered. For a moment I thought, It's Mr. Michael, Isaiah chirped. Remember I told you he was going to have dinner with us? Mrs. Rosa recovered quickly, but her gaze remained suspicious as she studied Jordan. Grace, may I speak with you in private? Of course, Grace said, moving towards a corner of the small room. Jordan pretended to continue eating, but he couldn't help but overhear the whispered conversation between the two women. Grace, have you lost your mind? Mrs. Rosa said in a low but urgent voice. You have a strange man in your house, wearing David's clothes. Donna Rosa, he needed help. What if he's dangerous? What if he hurts you and Isaiah? Jordan saw Grace glance in his direction, clearly torn between the trust she was developing in him and her neighbor's valid concerns. Isaiah defended him today, Grace said. My son got hurt protecting this man. Exactly, Donna Rosa exclaimed. Your son is a child. He doesn't know how to judge dangerous people. Isaiah, who had been listening to the conversation with growing discomfort, approached the two women. Donna Rosa, Mr. Michael isn't dangerous, Isaiah said with conviction. He's good. I feel it in my heart. Sweet boy, Donna Rosa said, kneeling to Isaiah's level. Your heart is pure, but the world has wicked people who take advantage of the kindness of children like you. But Jesus teaches me to know who is good, Isaiah insisted. Donna Rosa sighed and looked again at Jordan, who had stopped pretending to eat and was now openly observing the conversation. Sir, Donna Rosa said, addressing Jordan directly, I don't mean to be rude, but this is a family that has been through a great deal of suffering. If your intentions aren't pure, Jordan slowly stood up from the chair. Ma'am, I completely understand your concern, Jordan said respectfully. You're protecting people you love. That's admirable. So you're leaving? Donna Rosa asked directly. Before Jordan could answer, Isaiah ran to position himself between Donna Rosa and Jordan, just as he had done on the street with the aggressive youths. No, Isaiah shouted, tears beginning to well in his eyes. Mr. Michael can't leave. Isaiah, Grace said, trying to calm her son. Mom, you don't understand, Isaiah said, turning to his mother with desperation. I prayed for him. God sent him to us. If he leaves, how will God know we're grateful? The child's words struck all the adults present like lightning. Jordan knelt to Isaiah's level, looking directly into the child's eyes. Isaiah, you asked a question today that I couldn't answer, Jordan said softly. What question? You asked why God lets good people suffer, but sent me to find your family. Isaiah nodded, recalling the question. And do you know the answer now? Jordan drew a deep breath, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. I believe God allows good people to suffer so they can develop a compassion so profound they can recognize others who are hurting, Jordan said, his voice thick with emotion. And perhaps he sent me to you not so I could help you, but so you could teach me what it means to be truly good. Grace covered her mouth with her hands, clearly moved by Jordan's words. Mr. Michael, Isaiah said, cupping Jordan's face in his small hands. You're crying. Jordan hadn't realized tears had begun to fall. You asked me a difficult question, Isaiah, and when I tried to answer it, I realized something about myself that I didn't much like. What? I realized I've spent too much of my life judging people before I truly knew them, Jordan admitted. And you, at 8 years old, have shown me more about true goodness in a few hours than I've learned in decades. Isaiah spontaneously hugged Jordan. Does that mean you learned the lesson Jesus wanted to teach? Jordan hugged the child back, feeling as though his heart was being rebuilt. I think so, Isaiah. I think so. Mrs. Rosa watched the scene with her own eyes brimming with tears. Grace, she said softly, perhaps I judged too quickly. Mrs. Rosa, Jordan said, still holding Isaiah, you were right to worry. A mother and child alone need people to protect them. But we're not alone, Isaiah protested. We have Jesus, and now we have Mr. Michael too. Grace stepped closer and placed a hand on Jordan's shoulder. Mr. Michael, may I ask a personal question? Of course. What really happened to you today? Not just with those young men, but what brought you to this street? Jordan looked at Grace, then at Isaiah, and finally at Mrs. Rosa. For a moment he considered telling the whole truth, but something within him said it wasn't time yet. I was testing something, Jordan said carefully. Testing if true goodness still exists in the world. And did you find the answer? Grace asked. Jordan looked at Isaiah, who watched him with bright expectation in his eyes. I found more than an answer, Jordan said. I found a family that reminded me of who I used to be and who I want to be again. Isaiah beamed. So you'll stay with us? Before Jordan could answer, Grace gently interrupted him. Isaiah, darling, Mr. Michael has his own life. We can't expect him to. But Mom, Isaiah interjected, God sent him to us, and us to him. This wasn't by chance. Jordan looked at the extraordinary child and felt his resolve strengthening. Isaiah, what if I stay for a few days? Enough to make sure you're all okay? Really? Isaiah asked, his eyes lighting up. Really? Mrs. Rosa, who had observed the entire interaction, approached Jordan. Mr. Michael, I can see there's more to your story than you're letting on, she said. But I can also see my initial judgment was misguided. Any man who can inspire such devotion in a child like Isaiah must possess something special. Thank you, Jordan said sincerely. But, Mrs. Rosa continued, raising a cautionary finger, this community looks after its own. If you hurt this family in any way, I understand, Jordan said, and I promise my intentions are genuine. Isaiah practically bounced with glee. Let's show Mr. Michael where he'll be sleeping. As Isaiah bounded excitedly towards his room, Grace approached Jordan. Mr. Michael, I don't know why, but I have a feeling there's much more to your story, she said softly. When you're ready to tell the full truth, we'll be here to listen. Jordan nodded, touched by Grace's wisdom and patience. Thank you, Grace, for everything. But as they followed Isaiah to the room, neither of them noticed a figure observing the house from afar, someone who had tailed Jordan from the city center. In the darkness of the night, this figure pulled out a phone and made a call. Yes, I've found where he is. You won't believe where the famous Michael Jordan decided to spend the night. Jordan awoke in the dead of night to a soft sound coming from the other side of the small room. On the adjacent bed, Isaiah was sitting with a notebook on his lap, drawing by the light of a small flashlight so as not to wake anyone. Isaiah, Jordan whispered, what are you doing awake? Isaiah looked up, his eyes gleaming in the semi-darkness. Sorry for waking you, Mr. Michael, Isaiah said in a low voice. I couldn't sleep, so I decided to draw. Draw what? Isaiah hesitated for a moment, then turned the notebook to show Jordan. What Jordan saw left him utterly speechless. It was a simple drawing, made with basic colored pencils, but possessed a poignant beauty. It depicted Jordan with enormous white wings, smiling, embracing a small family. In the background, a male figure watched approvingly from the sky. It's you as an angel, Isaiah explained shyly, and that's Daddy in heaven, happy that we have protection now. Jordan felt his throat tighten with emotion. Isaiah, it's beautiful. Do you want to know what I dreamed? Isaiah asked, carefully putting the drawing away. I do. Isaiah moved closer, speaking in conspiratorial whispers. I dreamed that you were actually an angel god sent to test our family, Isaiah said. his eyes alight with excitement. And in the dream, Daddy appeared and said he asked Jesus to send someone special to look after me and Mommy. Jordan felt goosebumps prickle his entire body. Suddenly, a loud and insistent knocking on the door shattered the peaceful moment. Jordan and Isaiah exchanged glances, and Jordan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Something about the ringing had sounded urgent and unsettling. "Wait here," Jordan told Isaiah, moving toward the door. But Isaiah, with a child's typical curiosity, trailed closely behind him. Jordan opened the door to find Mrs. Rosa, but this time she wasn't alone. Two other neighbors were with her, all wearing stern expressions. "Mr. Michael," Mrs. Rosa said, her voice strained. "We need to talk. Now." "Of course," Jordan replied, sensing the gravity of the situation. "What is this about?" "Some people in the neighborhood are asking questions about you," one of the women, introducing herself as Mrs. Carmen, stated. "And they aren't friendly questions." The third woman, Mrs. Betty, moved closer. "Sir, we know Grace and Isaiah welcomed you with kindness, but now we are worried about the consequences of that for them." "What kind of consequences?" Jordan asked, his heart beginning to race. "Some people are saying it's not safe to have a vagrant living in a house with a child," Mrs. Carmen said carefully. "They're talking about calling social services." Jordan felt a chill run through his veins. Social services? "They could take Isaiah away from Grace," Mrs. Rosa explained gravely. "They could say she's endangering her son by harboring a stranger." Isaiah, who had overheard the entire conversation, approached with tears welling in his eyes. "They can't take me from Mommy," Isaiah cried out. "Mr. Michael is good. He would never hurt me." Mrs. Betty knelt down to Isaiah's level. "Sweetie, we know you believe that, but some people don't know Mr. Michael the way you do." "But that's not fair," Isaiah protested. "Mr. Michael is our family now." Jordan knelt beside Isaiah, gently holding his shoulders. "Isaiah, listen," Jordan said, his voice thick with emotion. "Sometimes doing the right thing means making hard choices." "What do you mean?" Jordan looked at the three women, then back at Isaiah. "Maybe it would be best if I left," Jordan said, his heart breaking as he uttered the words. "No," Isaiah screamed, throwing himself into Jordan's arms. "You can't go. God sent you to us." "Isaiah, my dear," Mrs. Rosa said gently. "Sometimes God sends people into our lives for just a little while to teach us something important." "But I still have so much to learn from Mr. Michael," Isaiah cried, "and he hasn't finished learning from us yet." Isaiah's words struck Jordan like a punch. The child was right. He hadn't finished learning from this extraordinary family. "Ladies," Jordan said, standing up, "what if I could prove I'm not a threat to Isaiah or Grace?" "How?" Mrs. Carmen asked. Jordan hesitated, considering his options. Revealing his true identity would solve the problem immediately, but it would change everything between him and the Jackson family. "Give me one more day," Jordan pleaded. "Just one more day to find a solution." "Mr. Michael," Mrs. Betty said, "we understand you're a good person, but the authorities won't care about that if they receive a complaint." Isaiah turned to the three women, determination shining in his tear-filled eyes. "You've known my family for a long time, haven't you?" Isaiah asked. "Yes, dear," Mrs. Rosa replied, "since you were a baby. And you know Daddy taught me to recognize good people." "We do," Mrs. Carmen said. "Then why don't you trust me now?" Isaiah asked with simple but devastating logic. The three women exchanged glances, clearly shaken by the child's question. "Isaiah, it's not that we don't trust you," Mrs. Rosa explained. "But there are laws and authorities who might not understand." "Laws are made by people, aren't they?" Isaiah interrupted. "And people can be wrong, can't they?" "Yes, but—" "So people who don't know Mr. Michael can be wrong about him," Isaiah concluded with irrefutable logic. Jordan watched the child defend him with an articulation many lawyers would envy, feeling a mix of pride and horror at the situation he had placed this family in. "Ladies," Jordan said, "I perfectly understand your concerns, and I don't want Isaiah or Grace to suffer consequences because of me." "Then you're leaving?" Mrs. Betty asked. Before Jordan could respond, Isaiah did something completely unexpected. If Mr. Michael leaves, I'm going with him, Isaiah declared with determination. Isaiah! All the women exclaimed in unison. No, Isaiah, Jordan said firmly. You can't leave your mother. She needs you. And I need you, Isaiah replied stubbornly. God sent you to our family. If you make him leave, you are disobeying God. The accusation of divine disobedience momentarily silenced the three women. Isaiah, said Donna Rosa gently, are you absolutely certain that Mr. Michael is who you think he is? Isaiah looked directly into Jordan's eyes, as if seeing straight into his soul. Donna Rosa, I've never been more certain of anything in my life, Isaiah said with absolute conviction. Mr. Michael is the answer to my prayers. And what if you're wrong? Asked Donna Carmen. Then may God forgive me for putting too much faith in people's goodness, Isaiah replied. But I'd rather be wrong believing in someone good than right by mistrusting someone good. Jordan felt tears welling up again. Isaiah's unwavering faith in him was both inspiring and terrifying. Mr. Michael, said Donna Betty, what do you have to say about all this? Jordan looked at Isaiah, then at the three worried women, and made a decision that would change everything. Ladies, I will tell you the truth about who I really am, Jordan said. But first, I need Isaiah to come with me for a walk. Why? Asked Isaiah. Because there are some things I need to explain to you before other people know, Jordan said. Important things about my true identity. Isaiah took Jordan's hand without hesitation. Okay, I trust you. Can you wait for us here? Jordan asked the women. When we return, I will clarify everything. The three women agreed, but Jordan could see the concern on their faces. As Jordan and Isaiah walked away hand in hand, neither of them noticed they were being followed by someone who had been observing the house all morning. The revelation was coming, whether Jordan wanted it or not. Jordan walked with Isaiah through the neighborhood streets, his mind racing as he tried to find the right way to reveal his identity without destroying the innocent faith the child had in him. Mr. Michael, said Isaiah, squeezing Jordan's hand, why are you so nervous? Isaiah, do you remember when you said it doesn't matter who I was before we met, but who I choose to be now? I remember, Isaiah said, nodding earnestly. Well, the time has come for me to tell you about who I was before, Jordan said, stopping his walk. They stood before Isaiah's elementary school, which was closed for Saturday, but Jordan knew there was something here that could aid in the revelation. Isaiah, do you trust me? Jordan asked. Of course I do, Isaiah replied without hesitation. Then follow me, Jordan said, leading Isaiah to the school entrance. On the exterior wall, a mural depicted inspiring figures, including a large photograph of Michael Jordan during his basketball heyday. Isaiah, Jordan said, pointing to the mural, do you recognize anyone in these photos? Isaiah studied the images carefully, naming several figures he knew. When he reached Jordan's photograph from the 1980s, he stopped abruptly. That's Michael Jordan, Isaiah exclaimed excitedly. Daddy's favorite player. Isaiah, Jordan said softly, look closely at that photo. Then look at me. Isaiah observed the picture more intently, then looked at Jordan. Jordan saw the exact moment comprehension dawned in the child's eyes. Isaiah's eyes widened slowly. Mr. Michael ... Isaiah whispered. Yes? Are you him? Isaiah asked, pointing a trembling hand at the photo. Jordan took a deep breath and nodded. I'm Michael Jordan, Isaiah, the basketball player. For a moment, Isaiah was utterly silent, processing the information. Jordan waited, prepared for any reaction. Then Isaiah did something entirely unexpected. He began to smile, slowly at first, then more broadly, until his entire face was alight with pure joy. I knew it, Isaiah shouted, jumping up and down. I knew God sent someone special. You're not mad at me for not telling you sooner? Jordan asked, surprised. Mad? Isaiah laughed. Mr. Michael Jordan, you're Daddy's favorite person. You're the greatest player of all time. But Isaiah, I didn't tell you and your mom the whole truth. You said your name is Michael, and that's true, Isaiah interrupted. You just haven't told them all the truth yet. Jordan was struck by the child's logic. You're really not upset? Mr. Michael Jordan, Isaiah said, testing out the full name. Can I ask a question? Sure. Why did you disguise yourself? Jordan knelt, meeting Isaiah's gaze. Because I wanted to know if there are still genuinely good people in the world, Jordan admitted. I had lost faith in humanity. And did you find your answer? I found far more than an answer, Jordan said, touching Isaiah's face. I found a teacher, an 8-year-old boy who taught me more about kindness than any adult ever could. Isaiah hugged Jordan tightly. Then Daddy was right, Isaiah exclaimed. He always said God sends special people in disguise to test our hearts. At that moment, they heard a familiar voice. Isaiah! Isaiah! Where are you? It was their teacher, Linda, who had arrived at the school to prepare some activities, even though it was Saturday. Teacher Linda! Isaiah shouted, running towards her. Come meet my special friend. Linda approached, smiling, but stopped abruptly when she saw Jordan. Her eyes flickered from the photo on the bulletin board to Jordan and back to the photo. My God, she whispered. Teacher Linda, Isaiah said excitedly. This is Mr. Michael Jordan, the real one. He was testing if there are still good people in the world. Linda remained silent for a few seconds, clearly in shock. You really are Michael Jordan? She asked. Yes, Jordan confirmed. And this extraordinary boy saved me from losing all faith in humanity. Linda looked at Isaiah with renewed admiration. Isaiah, did you know who he was? I knew he was special, Isaiah replied. Daddy always said you recognize good people by their heart, not their eyes. But before they could continue their conversation, a car abruptly stopped in front of the school. Jordan felt his blood run cold as he saw who was getting out. Brad Mitchell had found them, and this time he wasn't alone. Brad Mitchell emerged from the car with a venomous smile on his face, accompanied by Jake and Connor. But this time, there was someone else with them, an older man in a suit, whom Jordan recognized as likely Brad's father. Well, 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 Brad said loudly. Look what we have here, the bum and his little protector. Isaiah instinctively moved to stand between Jordan and the newcomers, displaying the same unwavering courage. These are the mean boys, Teacher Linda, Isaiah said. They hurt Mr. Michael on the street. Linda positioned herself protectively beside Isaiah. Gentlemen, you are on school property, Linda stated firmly. I suggest you leave immediately. Relax, teacher, Brad said with feigned politeness. We just came to clear a few things up with our friend here. The man in the suit stepped forward. I am Richard Mitchell, Brad's father, he announced in an authoritative voice. And I've come personally to resolve this situation. What situation? Jordan asked cautiously. The situation of you taking advantage of a poor family, Richard Mitchell stated directly. My son has told me about your charade. Isaiah stepped forward, brave as ever. It's not a charade, Isaiah protested. Mr. Michael was taking a test. Oh, really? Brad scoffed. And what kind of test would that be, kid? A test to see if there are still good people in the world, Isaiah said with conviction. And you failed the test yesterday. Richard Mitchell looked at Isaiah with disdain. Child, you don't understand. This man deceived your family. He didn't, Isaiah shouted, tears of anger welling in his eyes. He gave us a chance to do good. Linda moved closer to Isaiah, clearly impressed by the boy's courage. Mr. Mitchell, Linda said, this child possesses more wisdom than you realize. Linda, Jordan said calmly, perhaps it's time they knew the full truth. What truth? Brad asked sarcastically. Jordan took a deep breath, glanced at Isaiah, who nodded encouragingly, and made his decision. The truth is, I am Michael Jordan, Jordan declared, shedding the humble demeanor he had maintained. The basketball player. A deathly silence descended upon the scene. Brad, Jake, Connor, and Richard Mitchell stared, dumbfounded, their gazes flicking between Jordan and the photo on the mural, clearly struggling to process the information. You're kidding, Brad stammered, his voice stripped of all its earlier bravado. No, he's not, Isaiah said proudly. And you mistreated the most famous person in the world without even knowing it. The transformation was instantaneous. Jordan straightened, exuding the full dignity and presence that had made him a legend. His posture, his voice, his natural authority, everything now confirmed his words. My goodness, Richard Mitchell murmured. You really are Michael Jordan. I am, Jordan confirmed. And yesterday, Your sons mistreated someone they thought was vulnerable. They threw trash at me, humiliated me, and hurt a child who was trying to protect me. Brad was pale, clearly grasping the enormity of what he had done. Mr. Jordan, we didn't know. And that's the problem, Jordan exploded. You only respect people who can harm you. You mistreated someone you thought was defenseless. Isaiah approached Jordan, taking his hand. They're scared now, Isaiah observed. Just like a coward who hits a small dog but runs from a big one. Isaiah's comparison landed on the youths like a slap in the face. Richard Mitchell approached, visibly shaken. Mr. Jordan, if my son had known who you were— Exactly, Isaiah interjected before Jordan could respond. They only would have treated him well if they knew he was famous. That's being fake. Isaiah's wisdom left all the adults speechless. Mr. Jordan, Brad said, approaching hesitantly, I apologize, sincerely. To whom are you apologizing, Jordan asked. To Michael Jordan, the famous one, or to the bum you mistreated? Brad hesitated, clearly understanding the trap in the question. To both, Brad finally said, because both deserved respect. Jordan studied Brad's face for a long moment. And what will you do to make amends? Richard Mitchell stepped forward. Mr. Jordan, my son and I would like to make a substantial donation to any cause you support. No, Isaiah interrupted, surprising everyone. Money doesn't fix a bad heart. Jordan smiled at Isaiah. What do you think they should do, Isaiah? They have to learn to be good for real, Isaiah said seriously. They have to help people who can't give anything back. Linda approached. Isaiah's right, she said. Real amends come from real change. Jordan looked at the four men of the Mitchell family. Do you truly want to redeem yourselves? Yes, sir, Brad said sincerely. Then help me transform this community, Jordan said. Prove that people can change. But before anyone could respond, they heard Grace shouting in the distance. Isaiah! Isaiah! Where are you? Grace was running toward the school, clearly in a panic. Behind her came Mrs. Rosa and the other neighbors. The revelation was complete, but the real consequences were only just beginning. Grace Jackson ran down the street, her heart pounding. Mrs. Rosa had called her work in a state of utter panic, saying only that Isaiah had gone out with that man and that there was some kind of commotion at the school. When Grace arrived at the school, breathless, she found a scene that left her utterly confused. Isaiah and Jordan surrounded by four well-dressed white men, the teacher Linda looking tense, and an atmosphere thick with emotion. Isaiah! Grace shouted, running towards her son. Mommy! Isaiah responded, running into Grace's arms, but this time not in fear but with excitement. Mom, you are not going to believe what happened. Grace embraced Isaiah tightly, then eyed the strangers suspiciously. What's going on here? She asked, her voice laced with maternal concern. Mom, Isaiah said excitedly, Mr. Michael told us who he really is. Grace looked at Jordan, noticing something different in his stance, the way he carried himself. There was an authority and presence she hadn't perceived before. Grace, Jordan said, approaching respectfully, there's something about my identity I need to tell you. What kind of thing? Grace asked, instinctively pulling Isaiah closer. Jordan took a deep breath, knowing this was the pivotal moment. My name really is Michael. Michael Jordan. Grace frowned, confused, silent for a long moment, glancing from Jordan to the photo on the school's bulletin board, then back to Jordan. You mean the Michael Jordan? She asked slowly. Yes, Jordan confirmed. Grace sank heavily onto the school steps, clearly overwhelmed by the revelation. But why? She asked, her voice trembling. Why did you lie to us? Mom, he didn't lie, Isaiah protested. He was testing to see if there are still good people in the world. Isaiah's right, Jordan said. I didn't lie about who I am inside. I just didn't reveal my public identity. Grace glanced at the strange men, then back at Jordan. And who are these people? These are the men who mistreated Mr. Michael yesterday, Isaiah explained. But now they know who he is, and they're scared. Brad approached hesitantly. Ma'am, I'm Brad Mitchell. Yesterday I made a terrible mistake. I mistreated your son and Mr. Jordan. Grace rose slowly, walking towards Brad with an expression that made the young man recoil. You hurt my son? Grace asked, her voice low but dangerous. Yes, ma'am, Brad admitted, and I deeply regret it. My 8-year-old son had to defend an adult from you people? Grace continued. Yes, ma'am. Grace looked at Jordan, then back at Brad. And now that you've discovered he's famous, you want to apologize? Ma'am, Isaiah interjected, they promised to learn to be better people. Grace knelt to Isaiah's level. My heart, do you truly believe they can change? I believe it, Isaiah said with conviction. Jesus teaches that everyone has the capacity for betterment. Grace stood and faced Jordan directly. And you, she said, pointing at Jordan, you allowed a destitute family to expend resources we scarcely possess, offering hospitality you did not require. Jordan bowed his head, absorbing the weight of the just accusation. Grace, you are unequivocally correct. I exploited your generosity. No, Isaiah exclaimed. Mom, Mr. Michael gave us a chance to pass God's test. What test, Isaiah? Grace inquired. The test of whether our family still knows how to love people in need. Isaiah explained, his eyes welling with tears. And we passed, Mom. We passed. Linda approached the group. Grace, may I offer my perspective? Grace nodded. This extraordinary child has just schooled one of the world's most celebrated individuals in humility and kindness, Linda declared. This is not shame. This is a miracle. Grace gazed at Jordan for a prolonged moment. Michael Jordan, she stated slowly, were you truly losing faith in humanity? Utterly, Jordan admitted, until I encountered your family. And now I know there are still angels on earth, Jordan said, his gaze fixed on Isaiah. And some of them are 8 years old with colossal hearts. Tears began to stream down Grace's face. Isaiah, Grace murmured, kneeling beside her son, do you truly believe we helped someone of consequence? Mom, we helped someone who needed to remember how to be good, Isaiah replied. It doesn't matter if he's famous. What matters is that he needed love. Jordan knelt beside Grace and Isaiah. Grace, Isaiah, you have given me something no amount of money can procure, Jordan said, his voice thick with emotion. You have restored my faith in humanity. And what will you do with that faith? Grace asked. Jordan surveyed Brad and his family, then the modest school, before turning back to the Jacksons. I will use it to make a tangible difference, Jordan affirmed, beginning here, with you, with this community. Richard Mitchell stepped forward. Mr. Jordan, my family would be pleased to contribute to any endeavor you have in mind. And I want to work in earnest to redeem myself, Brad added. Isaiah looked at all the adults gathered around. Does this mean we're going to be a big family now? Isaiah inquired. Jordan smiled through his tears. If your mother forgives me for not being entirely forthcoming from the outset. Grace studied Jordan's face intently. Michael Jordan, she said finally, you may have started this as a test, but it ended as a blessing. If you promise never to hide anything from us again. I promise, Jordan said solemnly. Then you are welcome in our family, Grace declared, extending her hand. But before they could seal the deal, Isaiah posed a question that changed everything. Mr. Michael Jordan, now that we know who you are you going to help us pay Mom's bills? Isaiah's direct and innocent question sent everyone into laughter through their tears, breaking the emotional tension of the moment. Isaiah, Jordan said smiling, I'll do much more than that. And it was at this very moment that Michael Jordan made the decision that would transform not only the lives of the Jackson family, but the entire surrounding community. 6 months later, Michael Jordan stood on the stage of the new David Jackson Community Center, where hundreds of people had gathered for its grand opening. In the front row, Grace wore an elegant dress but maintained her warm smile. Isaiah clutched the microphone, ready for his special role. Good afternoon, everyone, Isaiah announced. 6 months ago, God sent an angel in disguise to our community, and that angel's name is Michael Jordan. The crowd erupted in applause as Jordan approached. Thank you, Isaiah, Jordan said, ruffling the boy's hair. But you know who the real angels in this story are. 6 months ago, I thought I was testing you, Jordan continued. I discovered it was I who was being tested. Grace joined Jordan on stage. Grace taught me that true generosity comes from those who have little but share everything, Jordan said. And Isaiah taught me that an 8-year-old can teach an adult about what truly matters. Brad, Jake, and Connor, Jordan said, nodding to the three in the audience, taught me that people can change when confronted with their actions. Jordan pulled a paper from his pocket. Together, we've achieved 50 families in dignified housing, 200 children in educational programs, a medical clinic, and this community center. But do you know which statistic makes me proudest? Jordan asked. What? Isaiah shouted. 0 instances of bullying in this community for the past 20 weeks. Tears streamed down many faces in the audience. Grace took the microphone. 6 months ago, I was a desperate mother. Today, Isaiah has guaranteed education, I have a dignified job, and we gained a godfather who loves us. Grace said, more importantly, we gained the certainty that God still performs miracles. Isaiah picked up the microphone for the last time. Dad used to say that you never know when God is testing your heart, Isaiah said. We didn't know Mr. Michael was famous. We helped because it was the right thing to do. Jordan hugged Isaiah. You taught me that true greatness isn't in how many points you score, but in how many lives you touch. The audience rose to their feet, applauding for minutes. Tears streamed down hundreds of faces. 6 months after that encounter on the street, an entire community had been transformed. But more importantly, one man rediscovered his humanity through the pure eyes of a child. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that kindness still exists.